it's Matthew. Thanks for tuning into this second installment of the Deep Listening Sessions. I'm up late editing this video, so this is just a real slice of life, me and my house here. So this conversation was great. A lot of really good stuff, and I'm getting to learn so much just from hearing these real honest stories from the black friends that I have in my life. And Chanda shared some pretty powerful stuff. She talked a lot about just the isolation experienced from kind of being caught in this weird cultural middle ground. I thought that was very insightful for us to hear about. But one of the most inspirational things that I found in her share was just her ability to see the good in people, even people who have behaved in a judgmental way towards her, and her ability to lead into human interactions from this place of love. And I thought it was a really powerful message for us to hear at this time when we're really addressing this ugliness of racism. So yeah, I found that to be very inspiring, and I think a lot of others did too. So yeah, enjoy this conversation, and thanks again for tuning in. Here we go.
Right. Well, we can start by just finding a seated position and closing the eyes. Taking a few breaths, slowing down at the end of our day here. So feel arrival into your breath. Feel the breath shift into the nostrils. And let yourself arrive in the present moment. So we'll notice the busyness of the mind, and we can set a brief intention to direct our attention fully to this conversation, fully to being here and present with each other. Fully to honoring the people that have come to share and listen, to honor our experiences. So we'll take a few more breaths to settle into that. So we can open the eyes. And for those of you who don't know Chanda, give her a brief intro. We've been connecting over the last year or so, just over yoga practice at different shows around town. Her and I have shared a lot about, the things we're growing through in life, just through yoga and everything. Chanda is Army medic. She is a physician in training. She is an artist. She is a just overall very kind, gracious, and down-to-earth human being. And I'm super happy that we're friends. And I'm also very grateful that, she chose to give her time and presence to share with us tonight. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Chanda.
Oh, thank you for that introduction. Very kind.
You're welcome.
So hello, everyone. My name is Chanda, as Matt said. So I just wanted to the reason I did decide to do this is because for me, this is what's happening right now in the world. It's so unfortunate for me. It's been happening a lot for years now, but I wanted to kind of just tell my story. Maybe someone here today can maybe have some sort of I don't know, however you felt coming in, maybe something will change by the end of the conversation, hopefully. So that's what I'm hoping to get from the conversation today. I wanted to just start by talking about my childhood and growing up where I grew up here in Akron, Ohio. I grew up in North Hill. I went to all of the schools. So I went to Finley Academy, and I went to Jennings Middle School, and then I went to North High School. And after that, I went to Hiram College, and now I'm at Kent State. So that's a little bit of my journey getting to where I am now. So I just wanted to touch on, growing up in a not so great neighborhood, seeing the things that I've seen and going through some of the things that I went through and how I was able to come out of that and get to where I am now. And just things that I went through being Black in America that I recognize that other people maybe didn't have to go through. Just from the diverse set of friends that I do have, and from being in a very long interracial relationship as well. Just things that I experienced with that as well. So that's kind of a little bit of the background of what I'm going to touch on today. So I did grow up in North Hill. I'll start off by just talking about some of the things that I had to go through. Matt and we went to a protest, and I think this was last weekend on Friday. And I'm not sure of the neighborhood we were in, but it was kind of, we marched through Arlington Plaza, and we went through I guess you would call it like the projects, or like a poor area of Akron. And it was kind of interesting to see, mostly white people marching through an area like that, and seeing how the people were responding. And then it really touched me a little bit, because it had me thinking about, I grew up in some of those similar neighborhoods, where I grew up in low income housing, and, not really seeing many people that were not the same color as me. So there was not many white people where I grew up, even though it is Akron, and it is it's pretty diverse here now. But, back then I felt like it was mostly African-American from where I grew up. So that really touched me a little bit, because I was just thinking about, like, what are the kids going to think, like, seeing all of these Caucasian people with Black Lives Matter signs marching through the neighborhood, and like what that means for them, like letting them know, like, we know what's happening, we care, we see you guys. And that touched me a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. And hearing Matt's perspective on it as well, just he was telling me how, he didn't like, just seeing the rough conditions of what it is. And I think that's the bigger problem, is just the kids not being exposed to too much, at a younger age, and going through, elementary, middle school, and high school, being confined in these areas where you're only surrounded by your family, your friends in that neighborhood, and you're not exposed to much more outside of the world. And I think that that's where these programs, kind of like the one we are going to donate to today, are just so important, because it gives the kids and the people in the community, a way to see that there's a bigger world, and that there's more to life, and that things are possible, and that they're able to do more than just stay in the cycle of their own family. So those are the things that that stuff really touches me and is deep to my heart, because I was that kid. I'm one of 6, and I'm the only one to graduate high school. I was the only one to go to college, and the first to join the Army. So I'm the first of a lot of things for my family. So that in itself was really challenging for me, because I didn't really have, someone to go to for guidance. Filling out my FAFSA for the first time, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, I have no clue, having to like text my mom for her information, and like, that was a war in itself, trying to get that. And then going to college for the first time, it was the first time I really felt like I could be myself outside of just trying to fit into a community and being conflicted with um, having to be a certain way growing up in inner city schools. You kind of have to be a little bit tougher. You have to kind of like, um, you want to fit in with the crowd and things like that. I feel like you aren't able to really express yourself fully or be who you really are as much. That's at least my experience. So when I got to college, I did feel a little bit more free, as if, as in me being able to be myself a little bit more. But without the programs I went throughout my childhood, I probably wouldn't be where I am now, I would say. So shout out to those programs. I did Upward Bound. It's a program where you, every summer, you stay at Akron U's campus. I think they did at Kent State as well. And you did summer program there. You would go to classes all throughout the summer. So for me, I was like the kid that was kind of like the oddball of the family. They say something about like being the third born, like the middle child. That was me. So like a lot of the things that I was into, and as far as like music, being artsy, things like that, I didn't really have a lot in common with my siblings or my parents or anything like that. So I tried to spend like as much as my time in the classroom, and I did so many sports. I stayed in sports all throughout middle school and high school. And I don't know, I think that perspective really gave me a lot of diversity. So I really feel like, how do I put it? Like, I feel like I feel like we should really focus on like kids and making sure they're able to see, more in life than like that. There's more to what they are just surrounded by, especially in this area. Like, I'm not sure if all of you are from around here, but the young girl that was just murdered a few days ago, that was really sad because she went to the same high school as me. And then I was just thinking about, you know, the fact that she was just killed just at a stoplight. And I'm like, what? Like, that just doesn't make sense. And I'm like thinking, and I'm like, you're trying to make sense of it all, like she was so young, and like she was just sitting at a red light. And what, for a white man to do that, which I don't know how they know that he's white, but just the whole idea of it is just kind of saddening to me. And I just feel like people should spend more time in communities where you don't see the same skin as you. So if you're a Caucasian person or any other race, I feel like spending time with the kids or just the parents or anyone, just spending time in the community, being able to see how people live, what people are going through is important, because I feel like you're only getting a specific view and you're not really getting the reality of what it is. So I think that that's like something really important that a lesson I learned, I would say, being in I had a very long interracial relationship. It was for about 6 years. And he was a white man. And of course, I'm a Black woman. And his family was like amazing, but definitely had to go through some challenges with like grandparents, they're from a different generation. So I experienced a lot of like questions. I felt like a lot of times people of a different race, they don't know how to like ask specific questions, or talk about specific topics while you're present in the room. That's always been like curious to me to figure out like how, like, why is that a discomfort for people? Or why can't, like the whole term of someone saying, oh, my Black friend, or versus just saying my friend. That's always been like a weird thing too, because it's like, why can't I just be your friend versus being your Black friend? Or here's my girlfriend, she's African American versus just being I'm your girlfriend. Or, you know, it's just like there's these specific things you notice throughout life that lets you know that you're different. That lets you know that you're the minority, like you're not the majority, and that things are going to be a little bit harder for you. So there's a lot of things I experience. I feel like I have a pretty diverse palette when it comes to those things. If anyone has a question about what I just said as far as my childhood and anything like that, feel free to ask. That was kind of just like a background. So I kind of want to hear some questions, and I'm kind of curious to see how you guys are feeling with everything that's going on.
Cool. I think Melody has a question.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask to unmute her. Let's see if that works here.
I can't see people. I don't know how to work Zoom, but I'm trying.
Let's see.
I only see you, Matt. I don't see anyone else. But
We can get Melody. I've had to unmute the question.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes,
yes.
we can.
I'm going to show my face. I had to.
Hello.
Proper. Can you see me?
Yeah, we can see
Yes,
you.
Melody, I see
Oh.
you.
Hi, my name is not Melody.
It's not M-E-L-O-D-Y?
No, it's not. Melody Cool, that's a song from Prince. That's what that's my game name for my siblings when we have game night via Zoom.
Nice.
Tanya.
Tanya.
I didn't.
Hi, Tanya.
Hi, Chanda T. I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to know how to raise the hand. I didn't know how to work that. But since I'm on here, I don't know. Do you know who I am, Chanda?
Yes, you look familiar. I feel like you were with. How do you know me?
All of your cousins call me Auntie Tanya. I am a friend of your mom's and your aunt. I watched your mom grow up, so I was a little emotional listening to what you were saying, because I can attest to that, because I grew up in North Akron. I attended Jennings and I graduated from North High School. And I was noting in what Chanda was saying that her experience was similar to mine, but when I went to North High School, I interacted with more of the white people that went to North than with the Black people. And when she spoke about being different and not like the other people, and she had to, she couldn't be herself. Well, I grew up being myself because, you know, my mom raised us to be ourselves and you don't have to go with the crowd. And so in doing so, I think what Chanda was fearing would be the result of her being herself, growing up where she grew up. I was on the receiving end of that. People that I grew up with, the girls in the neighborhood, because my sisters and I didn't do the things that they did, we were considered stuck up. We were often accused of acting white because we spoke properly.
Yes.
And we were in a word, we were a family of nerds. And that was not acceptable in North Akron or North Hill or in what we used to call the bottom. That's where I lived, where the projects were, where they're not anymore, where the street that the young lady was murdered on, that's where the bottom was, right up under the
White Bridge. Yeah.
Right. So I spent from 8th grade to 12th grade living in the bottom. I hated every minute of it because being someone who loved to read, someone who didn't hang out with other people who were up to mischief and not doing things and not being that badass in the neighborhood was unacceptable. And it subjected to me and my siblings to having to deal with bullies. And my mother raised us to turn the other cheek. So it wasn't about fighting back. But one day in the summer, I was tired of turning my cheek. And after that episode of me saying, okay, I'm tired of this. And so I handled my bully as she should have been handled a long time ago. And I told my younger sister, now you take care of yours. And we did that. And in fighting back with that, it brought on a whole new problem because now these people's entire families wanted to fight us. And having to deal with that, and also being someone who stays to yourself and you don't bother anyone, it's stressful on someone, especially if you don't have a support system around you. And I remember when Chanda was born, and that's why I call her Chanda T, because that was my name for her when she was born. And the people in her family, she's the first from her immediate family to graduate high school and go to college. But from in her family, the generation above her, there's only one person in her family who's graduated high school and gone on to graduate college. So it's just two out of a slew of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I am so proud of Chanda and the young lady she has become, because I saw her when she was born and I knew what she was surrounded with, and it wasn't a real encouraging environment as far as being successful. I tried with one of her cousins, because I was really close to her mom, to get her to go to school, but you can only do so much from afar. And after Chanda was probably, I don't know, in elementary school or something, and I moved out of town, so I wasn't around anymore and around their family. So she really doesn't, I don't think she really knows me. She only see me when I would come back to town and visit, but it's she's a wonderful young lady. And when she was going to school, and I think it was her last semester or something, and I found out that she was having trouble trying to finish school. I was like, okay, I got to find some kind of way to help her pay for this, to help her get this, because I wanted her to succeed, because I know where she came from. Mm-hmm. And I can attest to having to go out with, date someone who's of a different race or who looks like they're a different race. I dated someone once for several years, and he looked like he was white, but his mother was biracial and his father was white. But he taken the tone of the whites in his family, and his hair was like white people in his family. And when I would go out with him, I would get negativity from both white and black people. Yeah. From men who I'd seen for eons. And they have a problem with me now dating this white guy when they saw me first. Or I was with in around white people, they give me the look, and they thought I was African, so it was okay for him to date an African woman because I wasn't black. But I'm not African. I was born in Arkansas. And I mean, even one time we were going to an Indians game, a homeless man on the street had the audacity to say something. He said to me, "Oh, I see you like white bread." And I'm like, dude, you're homeless. I mean, even a homeless guy thinks he has a place to question the race of the individual that I date. So it doesn't matter your socioeconomic status when it comes to people having a bias against someone dating who they want to date.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. And definitely when what you were saying about just growing up and what I was surrounded by and all of that was, it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. Just, being judged for wanting to be better, which is strange to me. You get picked on, you get judged for liking school, for trying to do the right thing, for trying to talk proper. I felt like I was, trying to just learn and see more and have goals and, all of these things you want to accomplish. It's like not cool for some odd reason. So what you're saying, like my family was completely opposite. I remember girls coming to my house trying to, picking on me, following me home from school. We always had to walk home from school. So right down the same street that Jennings is on, is it Talmadge Avenue? Walking down there, you would have a group of people following you home.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into the house and they're like outside your house waiting for you to fight you. And my mom, she would make me go outside.
I know your mom, because
yeah, she was like, I love my mom, not bashing her. She just grew up differently. And I don't want you guys to think I'm bashing my mother, because I'm not. She's great. But that's something that I had to do, like defend myself. She'd make me go out there and defend myself. I remember my dad, we would have fight night almost like every Friday, where all the siblings, because we were arguing all the time, fight each other. Or if, I've definitely had a lot of anger growing up, for sure, because I was just couldn't be myself. I felt like I had to, it was always an issue, So that was, I definitely learned a lot about controlling your anger and channeling it into something positive, which for me was sports. And if you talk to any of my coaches in high school, they'll tell you I probably cursed out every coach I had in high school. And they always just let me get it out, and they would talk to me afterwards because they knew what I was going home to. They knew the situation I was in. They understood that. So they understood why I had all of these emotions all the time. So, it was challenging growing up. I'm not going to lie. I tried to just look at it as a learning experience. And I was telling Matt this the other day. I was like, I'm grateful I went through all that stuff when I was a kid, because I feel like life now, I'm able to handle anything that comes my way. Like something goes wrong, I laugh at it, I fix it, I figure out a solution, and I just move on, because I've endured so much pain and suffering growing up. So it's I don't know, I just have a hard time with dwelling on stuff for too long, and I try to be optimistic about life and things, because I think that's just a better way to look at it, is trying to look at it in a learning situation. But definitely growing up was hard. I mean, I was taken from my mom twice, so I was in the children, I've been to the children's home twice before, living with a different family. That was interesting. They split you up. They split your siblings up. So I don't know how that all works, but I'm pretty sure if you get a call or something happens and they just come take the kids off right away. And there was a few weeks that went by, and you have to, then you get to go back, and then they do these visits. So, you know, that was another thing I went through. And then just seeing like, you know, you're surrounded by violence, you're surrounded by drugs, you're surrounded by just people like that they do the same thing every day. So it's like people waking up, drinking, smoking, playing dice, doing whatever they have to do. These are all stereotypical things, which I hate saying right now because it's very like stereotypical, but stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. So, I mean, I don't like saying that, but I mean, this is just reality, what it was. And it was just hard for me to like find, like, no one's gonna want to go paint or sketch with me or go on a hike or, you know, do something outdoorsy because it was considered white. You know, doing yoga is considered a white person thing, or being interested in going on hikes is like a white person thing. That's what I grew up around. It's like the things that I wanted to do wasn't cool enough for people to like understand. So I just stick to sports most of the time. So yeah, that was interesting. It was an interesting way of growing up, but it was not all bad. And, you know, I had the things that I needed most of the time. So, you know, I can't really complain, but I just think that people should, it's the kids are the future, man. I really believe this. The kids are the future. We have to show the kids that there's more out there. And I think that people taking their kids to the protest, I think that's great. I like that I'm seeing that. And I like that some of these young kids are calling their parents out on things, and even being older, not even calling your parents out, but just having the conversation and just having conversations with your friends, like coworkers, if it's allowed. It's just so important because I always say, like, you see a stranger and you don't know their story. They could be having a terrible day. So I always try to give people compliments because it just makes them feel better. You know, so having conversations and communicating is just so important because not all people are bad. Even the people that I grew up around, and even maybe the situations that weren't great, it was probably just maybe that person was hurting, or maybe it was just lack of communication. So I try to look at it that way. But I know I was telling Matt the other day, like, I just don't understand why it's so hard for people to like do the right thing. And like, I don't understand why racism is even a thing sometimes. I'm like, why is this even people? How can you not like someone because of the way they look? It just blows my mind. So I don't know. It's confusing. It's everyone has their own experience and opinions on it, and
Chanda,
that's why.
can I ask you a question about that last statement there?
Yeah.
So you're talking about how like you have a hard time understanding how people get into this racist mentality, like, and we know at this point, like, racism is a learned behavior. Like it's programmed into us through society, through friends, through family. What do you think about your experience growing up didn't program you that way, or allowed you to see people in this broader way that you're talking about?
I think the friends I had, being on sports, so usually there's some diversity on the sports team. North Hill so I don't know if many people know, but North has the ESL program, so the English Second Language program. So there was a lot of foreigners that went to North High School, which was cool because we used to have these like potlucks. They used to bring food, but it was, I think the friends I had, and I don't know. That's a good question because my mom is she didn't like that I dated a white person. She didn't like I took a white boy to prom. She's not too fond of it. She always says you should date someone of your own kind. which I get, but it should be my choice, and I like what I like, But I really don't know. I would really just have to say the friends I kept, and I think that's just who I am, I've always been the kind of person where if a person treats me bad and they're Indian or from Australia, I'm not going to like that specific individual because they treated me wrong. But I'm not going to like say I don't like all Australian people or all Indian people because of that. Try to just go off of interactions with specific people. I've just always been that way. So maybe it's just the way I am. And I don't know. I'm different. I'm telling you, I really have no idea. People say this all the time. I don't understand how you are the way you are from the family you have. And I'm like, I honestly don't know. I really don't know. I just try to stick true to who I am. And like, I've always just been driven to do that. So I really don't know. I could tell you situations where in high school, my sister, she's 2 years, we're all like 2 years apart. There's 6 of us. So there's a point in time where I was in high school at the same time as my sister, my younger sister. And she's a little bit more wild than me. And I remember she had got expelled from high school for something she did. And I got called to the office where I was an office helper as well. And they're like, "This is your sister?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "You guys have the same mom and dad?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "You guys live in the same house?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "No, I don't believe you." I'm like, "Yep, we do." They're like, "You guys are so different." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So it's like people like couldn't believe that she was my sister. So that was kind of like, wow, So
It looks
I don't know.
we've got a Petra. I know Petra has a question, and Renee had a question as well
Okay.
that she typed in the chat. So Petra, would you like to ask?
Yeah, it's actually not a question. It's rather like what resonates with me, and maybe that's also interesting to hear for you guys. So I've nowhere near any experience like you did, Chanda, but I've lived for almost 4 years in Ethiopia, and I've lived mainly in Addis Ababa that has a international community, and I had a good job for the German academic exchange, so I had a very, very privileged life there, and I lived in my kind of work bubble. And whenever I left that bubble, I also had interesting experiences with people in Ethiopia. So especially when I was traveling on the countryside where people are not very educated. And what was really tough for me was this, I was going into areas where people usually don't see white people. And so the children would come along and touch my skin and touch my hair and stuff. And they were very curious. And and that was actually super, not in any way bad or disagreeable for me. So I quite liked the contact. It was fun as well. But what was really tough was being always available for comments, and everybody could just start talking to me. So when I moved through Addis, everybody had the right to, to shout at me or or shout a comment at me. And as you said, it's just really this availability to getting in touch and not being able to blend into a normal life, and to blending in is one of the keywords. So that was really tough for me after a while. So I became really very impatient with people as well, and really refused also. I got in mindsets where I totally refused contacts because I found that so strenuous. And when I was in my work bubble, that was not present because everybody knew who I was, and I was teaching at the college and the kids knew me. And so there I kind of forgot about it. And then I went home by walk, for example, because the car didn't function or whatever. And then suddenly I was such an alien. It was really, and that was a very interesting experience as well, but I found it super strenuous. And honestly, I'm quite happy to be in the US and being able to blend in again. So I think that's a really hard thing to cope with on the long run. And one thing that also reminded me, so you started talking about exposure, and that was a big topic in Addis as well when I was teaching. So our mission was to give the students exposure to, in this case, contemporary architecture, to teach them things that their colleagues in Ethiopia couldn't teach them because they hadn't traveled and they didn't know. And I think this exposure and traveling and getting in touch is just such a key. And it
Yeah,
was really reminding me so much about hearing this word now from you is kind of really touching me in a way. So that's
yeah.
really one of the keys to solve this, I think.
It really is. It really is. I truly believe without being exposed to the things I was exposed to when I was younger, I would not be the person I am right now. Probably wouldn't be in the same position for sure. And thank you for doing the work you do. That's very cool to hear that you work with, you're involved with things like that. That's really cool. Um, yeah, it's really important. It's just like, you grow up in an area and all you see is just like all this trauma and you're just dealing with all this stuff. And you get to go and you're like, wow, like this is cool. This is, being able to, I know Akron U's campus, the University of Akron, their campus isn't that cool, but being in middle school and getting to stay on that campus was crazy to me. I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like they have a track, they have this, they have that. I want to come here. So it was just really, really nice to see it. And it shows that people believe in you and that they see you other than just having this stereotype of, oh, you're poor, you live in a poor neighborhood and you're Black, and like feeling like no one cares. And I feel like that's a lot of what it is. It's just America just portrays Black people to be so bad all the time. And it's like the African American community, like I remember thinking about, I'm an my ancestors are from Africa, but I don't have any touch to that. But I'm American, but I feel like I can't really be American because I don't feel welcomed here. So I'm African American. So like we have to like create our own traditions and create our own history and our own, just everything had to be created in a way based off of, this, our ancestors that were slaves that were here. And I think sometimes it's kind of like, you feel like you always have that like stamp because of like the history of the country being African American here. And I think people they just portray it just in different ways throughout media, which is so powerful. And I think we're just finally starting to unpack that with all the protests that are happening right now. And the people that are having conversations, all of you that are a different race on here today, just being here and having the conversation, like you are doing your part. And I think that's great. I think that things will change. I have hope. But it really starts with the heart, honestly. It's like, how do we change someone's heart and their mind? Like they can change their vote, they can change their political view, all this stuff, all of that, and they could post a video, they could post something on social media, but how are you when you're back at home, when you're living day to day, when you're interacting with people? Will you have a change of heart and start to really live seeing people for just being a person versus the stereotype that comes along with being in America? And I think that's like a huge issue. And like, that's like the most challenge. That's the most hard. That's so challenging, like, how do we fix that? Changing someone's heart. So I often think about that. I don't know. But what you said about the hair thing was funny because I used to have straight hair and I always permed my hair, and I cut all of my hair off about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a while. And I haven't straightened my hair in such a long time, so I have this fro. And I kid you not, I get compliments all the time on my hair, which I love. But people will sometimes just like come and touch my hair. And the only time I get bothered by it is when sometimes it takes a while to get all of your curls. And sometimes you have just like the perfect hair day. Everything's even. And then someone will come and just like, smash it in or something. And you're just like, but I think that it's beautiful that people are embracing their natural self and natural hair. I will say a lot of Black women don't like their hair to be touched, though, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a thing. I understand it because it takes a lot to get our hair a certain way, and it's a whole process. So just touching someone's hair, I would recommend not doing that. I would probably ask first before you like just go and like touch someone's hair, because it kind of makes you feel like you're like a pet in a zoo. And like you're it feels like fetishy, like someone has a fetish with your hair or the way you look. So sometimes I do feel that way a little bit, like I'm like this object that people haven't seen or don't see often, so they're intrigued by the way I look, so they, and sometimes I feel like I have a somewhat of a privilege because I'm a lighter tone Black person. That's a whole nother thing in itself, like stereotypes within the Black community and black people having these discriminations against their own people
Colorism
is a thing. So sometimes you feel a little bit privileged because you are a lighter skin tone and you might have curly hair and you might have a straighter nose or higher cheekbones or something, and you have like more European features, so you're not as threatening as someone who's darker with more African features, so sometimes you have to like recognize that, and you're considered quote unquote more like versatile or marketable in the United States for some reason, which is a weird thing to sit with sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Chanda, can I ask a question about that dynamic?
yeah.
From what friends have told me, from what my Black friends have told me, is that like that whole paradigm ultimately stems from the way white people have treated Black people in this country.
Yeah.
And what you guys, I'm hearing, and Tanya, you shared about this a lot too, about just how being different in some sort of way isolated you. There was a lot of isolation that you experienced from your own community, but these things are ultimately stemming from kind of these are the more subtle aspects of like a white supremacist culture that are kind of invading like the Black community and putting these additional like pressures and divisions on you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think like, there's always that thing they teach you in history where, oh, if you were lighter skinned, you got to work in the house versus being like out picking the cotton. Like, I hate to take it there, but that's how we learned it, growing up. And I think a lot of that still plays a role. I think things are definitely better. I think people are having the conversation, which is good. But you do have a certain privilege being a little bit lighter because you're just a tad bit, people just don't see you as threatening for some reason, because you can pass as like mixed or just more European features. So they might think of you as something other than just African American. And I think that makes you just like a little less threatening, which is super sad. But you have to use that to an advantage by having the conversations and by, I think, if you're in a situation where you can educate, then that's what you should do. Because a lot of times people just aren't educated on stuff. Like, you know, when it comes to racism or having certain opinions about certain things, they haven't experienced it. They don't know the history, and they're not educated, or there's some kind of communication that should be put in place for it. Is how I look at it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I say. Like, if someone, I remember I was in Ray's. I'm sure all of you know Ray's, Highland Square. And this was when Trump was running for president. And it was like a weekday, like a Wednesday or Thursday. And I went into the bar with my ex-boyfriend at the time, who's white. And we sit at the end of the bar. There's these 4 men who looked like they just got off work, like they were doing like landscape or something. And they had the news on. It was something with Trump on there. And they started to say like racist comments to me. And I don't need to repeat them. They just were racist. And the guy was sitting like there was a seat separating. So there was me, a chair, and then the 4 of them. And then there was me and my ex-boyfriend at the time. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just listening to them. They're saying the comments. They're not shouting it, but they're saying it to like, felt like they were trying to antagonize me to kind of like go off. And yeah, I just was like, I just sat there and I just didn't pay it in mind. And my ex-boyfriend at the time, he got really upset and he started yelling at them. And he's like, we're going to leave. Like, forget this. Like, I'm not going to take this. And I was just like, it's fine. Like, I'm not going to let people ruin. Like, I shouldn't have to leave because people are being rude to me is how I felt, you know, like because of their opinions, I shouldn't feel like I can't sit here, you know? So for me, if someone's being rude or racial to me, I'll just let them get it out and then like try to have a conversation about it. That's just how I view it. Like, I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to like curse you out or anything like that. I'm going to like just look at you like, you know, like, why are you? I think it just makes them look bad. And usually people, when they get to know you, it's a different mindset. But a lot of people don't even give you the chance to do that because they're so strong-minded. So I've never encountered a situation where I was in danger, but I've experienced stuff all the time. Like, I've been pulled over. We lived in Stowe for 3 years, and I got pulled over all the time there. And they would just run my license, take my ID. They'd see I'm in the military and they'd leave me alone. But like, they would just pull me over for no reason. So I don't know. I mean, I've experienced a lot of stuff where I'm like, was that because of race? And you just think to yourself like, no, I hope it's not about race. And then you're like, is that about race? You know, I had a situation. So as you know, the military was called out for the protest. And I felt really conflicted because I was like, well, I would not want to do that. You know, I wouldn't want to be in that position to where I signed up to, most people in the military, they signed up, this is just from my own experience, signed up to like heal, not to harm, and to protect, not to like antagonize, you know? So when they issued orders out for military to go out during the protests, it was just, so you want us to go and protect the people from what? They're doing something that they have the right to do, but you want us to go and like, what are we doing there exactly? You know, it didn't make sense to me. So I went to my leadership about it, and this was just like 2 weeks ago. This all happened, and I was just like, you know, I'm gonna go to the protest, and like, what happens if I get arrested, or what happens if something crazy, you know, like just what if? And like, they did not have an answer. And then I got pulled to the side by myself, and I had a talk with leadership, and he was just saying like, you know, you have to stay neutral, like you can't really say much, and like I understand that because I guess when you have a uniform on, you have to, it's like you have to behave a certain way. You can't really, like, you're representing the country when you have that on. So it's like you can't really feel a certain way. So I'm like, that would be very conflicting for me being at a protest, having to like control areas, which was, so I was able to not have to do that. I requested not to do that because I just did not want to do that. I was like, I can't do that. But I know they did send some people out to Cleveland. So, you know, I joined as a medic, and part of the reason for me joining the military was because I needed money to pay for school. And that was the way to do it. I mean, I went to school, and I was out of school for 2 years because I couldn't transfer schools because I had a huge bill at Hiram College, which is like 50 grand to go there. And I had thousands of dollars I had to pay off. So I worked for 2 years to pay that off just so I could transfer to Kent State. And they hold your transcript. I'm sure you guys know all this. So, you know, joining the military has like helped me tremendously. Like, it's been great. And my experience has been great. I think now is the first time I've actually questioned it all because of like, just realizing like, wow, you know, you have to kind of, I can't even express myself the way I want to as a Black person in the military, as a Black woman. I can't even really like express how I feel because, you know, they see everything. I can't really even say much on here because I know Matt's going to record this. So it's like, you know, it kind of makes me feel a little weird about it a little bit, but I understand like why they have those things put in place overall, but it's a little bit conflicting for me sometimes. So does anyone have any questions about that?
Renee had a question a little bit ago, and
I started rambling a little bit.
no, that was good. I mean, you touched on a lot of stuff there. And I mean, one comment I just feel called to make is I'm amazed at like your patience and kindness through these stories, of where it seems like you've developed this ability to like de-escalate some of these situations where people, quite frankly, people are coming at you with some bullshit, and you just are kind of like, all right, are you done? Okay. All right. And
yeah, because it's like, what can you do, you know? And I have to kind of, you know, I want to respect people, and I want to be respected. And as long as like there's some sort of understanding, as long as it's good for both people, both party or whatever, then it's good, you know? I don't want to cause any friction, but I understand why things are put in place and why rules are rules. And the only thing I don't understand is when people are hateful for like no reason. And that's the whole racism thing. I will never understand it. I don't get it. Don't get it. Because people are cool. And I think if you just talk to people and just like, I don't know, it seems so easy, you know, but people just are not that way. And I don't get it. And it kind of freaks me out being in Ohio. I didn't know Ohio was this bad. I honestly didn't. Like, I knew that, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I mean, I know that there's people all over the country that are, I hate to even say racist, but I didn't know Ohio was that racist, which was kind of wild to me. That someone like 5 minutes away from where I live just got murdered.
Yeah.
And that's just like, you see it on the news all the time and you're like, wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. But when it's like in your backyard, it's like, whoa, that's heavy. So it kind of makes you a little bit scared, like driving. I'm like, crap, like gives you a little bit of anxiety. And then you have all these Black people who are going to be going through anxiety and like all these mental issues from all of this. And the media is just showing all of this stuff. And then that's going to be another issue, is all of these people with huge amounts of anxiety and like, who else knows like what's going to happen mentally with people because of all of this, and like what services are going to be available for the people who can't afford it. And I think about that too, you know, like not everyone knows how to handle stuff like this, especially kids.
Yeah.
You know, I said earlier, kids going to protest, I mean, they're obviously aware of what's happening. So it's like, I think about, you know, the bigger picture of stuff, just like, you know, when this all dies down, it's still going to be, we're still going to have, because we've seen this before. We've seen protests. We've seen people die. We've seen people get killed. We've seen this before. It's like history just repeats itself. So it's like, what's going to make this different? You know, how are we going to make it different? And I think that like, I don't think people were doing this before, having these kind of conversations. And you, Matt, being white and providing a space to have the conversation. I don't know if people were doing that before, but it seems like we do have more of power with social media, which is good. And people showing up to the protests, which is good. But I just get worried. I was telling Matt, I don't know, like sometimes I'm not sure if people are, it again starts with your heart. We have to change their hearts. It's like we need more community work, or more with just being around, like Matt walking through that neighborhood, that probably hits you pretty hard, you know, like seeing what people are going through, seeing what the real, you know, versus just watching the newscast or like an interview from someone. So I don't know. Racism probably will always exist. I feel like people always will have an opinion because it's America, and that's just, people have lots of opinions in the world. And I don't know. I think that things could be a lot better, but I think the Black experience in America is just so complex. And it really just depends on like, I know I have some Black friends that grew up pretty privileged. I mean, they grew up wealthy. They grew up with not a lot of issues. Their parents were in good, powerful positions, and they had a great life. You know, they didn't really have many issues. So, I mean, there's another side to it, you know, but it's really just story by story. And that's why I think having these kind of conversations are important, and just talking and getting to know people is important. So like next time you see someone, I just think, don't think the worst thing all the time, you know, when you see something, or if someone is misbehaving, or if someone is like robbing or stealing or doing something, like think about why they're doing that. Think about the surroundings that they're in. Think about if they were hungry or not. You know, think about the situation that they're in. You know, most of the times people don't want to be on drugs, or they don't want to do bad stuff. It's just they're doing what they need to do to survive, or they're doing what they need to do to provide. You know, it's not so black and white all the time. And I have seen that growing up, you know, people not with no education, no skill, selling drugs because that's the only way they know how to get money, you know, or, you know, just not knowing the resource to go to, or not having it available, or maybe being a little bit too lazy to look, or not having internet to search, or not knowing how to get to the library. It's just like so many situations, you know? So I have this like sympathy for people in these situations, but I also feel like, okay, well, you could be doing more, you could be doing better, because I was that person as well. I went through that stuff, and look at me, I'm doing fine. I was able to do better. But not everyone has that same drive and same like self-love to get up and like recognize like, okay, I can go off and do more and do better. So I think just like sometimes things aren't so black and white, you know, when it comes to just race and just I don't know, being Black is just so difficult, I think. But
Well,
I love it. I love my skin. I love the skin I'm in. And I think it's cool that I'm this skin color. So I like it. I mean, I love being Black. It's cool. So I don't know. I think things are getting better. I don't know. I have hope. I'm optimistic.
I think we can all be really inspired, though, by this message you have of seeing, like, looking beneath the surface behavior and
Yeah.
seeing people as they are on a deeper level. Like, that's a really beautiful undertone that I'm hearing in everything that you're saying, and something really important for us to keep in mind, during this time when we're seeing all these arguments, all these intense conversations, to know that, like, whatever sort of crazy behavior we're seeing out there, there's a human underneath all of that. So thank you for highlighting that perspective.
Yeah.
Renee asked a question a while ago, and I want to give her the floor for a second.
Aw,
Yeah.
thank you guys. Chanda, it's been awesome to listen to this. Okay, so I agree with so much of what you're saying. I think, when you were talking about growing up in a very specific environment with specific ways you should act, and then you even mentioned, like, when Matt was in that neighborhood and it was sort of a shocker, as anyone that possibly wouldn't have seen it before. I grew up in Kent, Ohio, and we had, my whole family, we had friends over of all races all the time. And I have to say that it was because of my parents. Like, not only did they not care, it was just never a deal. They never said anything, like, about anyone that we had over. And it was like anybody. So, and it was always just like, oh, you're welcome to dinner, you're welcome to do this. And it was no big deal if they were white, Indian, Black. So I think for me, and I was then also invited to their houses, and this is like kindergarten or first grade. So, but going over to their houses was like, even though our house wasn't great, but we were like lower middle class, but then going to some of their houses, I was just like, oh, you guys all share this 1.5 rooms. And so it gave me perspective when I was very little to see that. And, like, I think that's why 4th or 5th grade, whenever we started learning, like, real history about what happened, shocked the hell out of me, because I never knew a difference. And my parents never, well, I don't even know if my mom did really, but they never said it was a deal or anything like that. So anyhow, I think when we're doing this, when we're communicating like this stuff, it's only hope for that our generation raises another generation to not, like, that's not even a slight deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so how would you be able to show anyone different respect when it's not a deal growing up? I think the, like, raising this generation to know and or not know a difference is how we start changing hearts. Is like, as a human, we are human beings. We are all the same. The pigmentation is a slight different, I don't know, like, happenstance of whatever you are, but we are all different. Anyhow, okay, I don't want to talk a million more sentences, but I taught at Kent State. I taught in 2017. I taught in the beginning of fall semester last year and spring semester this year. What about going to college for you was sort of that, like, like, admittance ticket to then be more of yourself? Because I remember you saying that. But was it a certain professor? Was it a class? Was it a self-challenge, or just like the environment?
I think when you go and you're kind of just like, you live on campus and you're just by yourself. Like, you don't have, it's like a breath of fresh air. I don't know how else to explain it. It's kind of like, okay, I'm here. by
Yeah.
myself, you kind of get to, there's so many different kinds of people. And the professors, I have not had a bad situation with professors when it comes to race or anything like that. The classrooms are most of the time pretty diverse. And I think all of the extracurricular like activities that they have, so like the dances and just all the organizations on campus. And I think Kent State does a really good job with all of the magazines and stuff that they like that they have available is really good. Yeah, I don't know. I think it was just like the people and just being in a different environment, being on a campus was just so different. And it was just like, it felt like I was like visiting a different like country, not different country, but like, like you're
Mhm.
not back at home in Akron. And it was just, even though you're like 40 minutes away, you're still kind of, you feel like you're just in
Yeah.
a whole different state. And it was
Yeah.
just, it's just refreshing. It's just like, I don't have to worry about seeing this person or that person or dressing this way or that way. You can just kind of, it's like you're figuring it out,
Yeah.
figuring it
Awesome.
out, but
Awesome.
you're doing it by being yourself. So it was cool. And I think I needed that for sure. I think everyone needs that time alone, time to
Yeah.
explore.
Agree.
Yeah,
Awesome.
cool. What'd you teach? Curious.
I taught, so in 2017, I taught motion graphic design, like animation.
Oh, cool.
And then in 2018, or I'm sorry, 2019, and then 2020, I taught digital science. So almost the same thing.
Cool. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. But teaching is one of those things. And I only could teach what I know. So, but to multiply that by 24 people, and some of those kids, you're just like, your whole heart is like, oh, you're so awesome, you're gonna be so good. And you keep saying that. And then even if you do believe it the first day, toward the end of the semester, when you see their like, or the improvement, or the emails I got afterward, and they were like, Renee, I landed that job with the exact salary I wanted. And you're just like, oh man, I didn't do it, you did it. But
Yeah,
it's very cool to be a part of.
yeah. That's really cool. Too, what you were saying about your parents and how, you were able to kind of see that difference in realities from your friends of different color.
Mhm.
And what you said about, like how it's almost like we're putting in the work for the next generation to kind of have a better situation. Like we're kind of like, it's like we're putting in that, like, I don't remember what you said, but you're basically touching on like how we're going to change their hearts, and by showing the kids what they need to see, and how we are all just humans.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like we're all having these conversations and like putting in that work. That way the kids in the generation below us can kind of have a good start, like hopefully,
Yeah.
we hope, a better life ahead of them. So
Yeah. And I mean, I really believe Kent did a good job of that.
yeah,
Even when we were in kindergarten, aside from my siblings, I had non-white friends sooner than I had white friends, aside
yeah,
from my immediate family. So I don't know. So it's just very, very crazy to me about any of that.
yeah, yeah. It's good. I like Kent. I love it there.
Yeah.
So
I think we're at a good point to wrap up here. But yeah, I think it's a nice spot to leave the conversation at, of thinking about, how we're setting the stage for the next generation to not have this programmed racism that this country is just starting the process of learning how to undo. Um, yeah, and it starts with simple things like opening our hearts to the experiences of others, coming at interaction from a more empathetic, compassionate place, a less divisive place. So I feel like we all got a good chance to cultivate that with each other a little bit tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Shanda, any final words before we close out with a little couple minutes of meditation?
Yeah. I just want to say, going forward in life, just try to, lead with love and have an open heart. And next time you find yourself getting frustrated or not understanding something, try to talk it out and just try to understand, and don't get too wrapped up in what the media is showing, and just go see your neighbor, go talk to your neighbor, go around the block, like try to just do what you can do, with the resources you have. So
Yeah.
just think next time you get into a situation, just how can I do it the better way?
Cool.
That's all I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Chanda.
All right. Well, let's just take a second here, everyone, and we'll close our eyes before we zip off to the next thing. We'll just give ourselves a minute to process what we just took in, the insights that were shared. Maybe getting a little bit of a sense for what Shanda was talking about of leading with love. Breathing into that, feeling that. Cultivating an intention to be less in our judgmental minds about other people, especially people we don't understand. And cultivating the ability to look on others in a more loving way. So we'll close up this session with the sound of Om. You're free to join in or just listen. If you'd like to join, you can exhale the breath you have, take in a new breath. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. And we all bow in respect to each other and say namaste.
Namaste.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here, being part of this conversation. Thank you to everyone who stepped forward with your questions and your experiences that just gave rise to great conversation and insights. And thank you, Shanda, for lending us your time and your experience and just your kind viewpoint of dealing with all this madness. I think is a big inspiration to all of us. I'm going to post the link one more time to the Refresh Collective. Again, I would just love to bless them with some kindness and enable, some kids in East Cleveland to have this experience of learning to express themselves through music and art and gardening under the guidance of a really awesome person. So that link is in the chat. You can access the chat at the bottom of the toolbar here for those who are new to Zoom. So you can grab that on your way out. And I'll keep this going through the month of June. So if you'd like to join the remaining conversations for the rest of the month, You can find me on Facebook or Instagram, Matthew D. Robertus, and I'd be happy to have you in future conversations. So thank you so much, and everyone have a good night. Take care.
Bye.